Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is differ, and today's verb was suggested by the viewer Luis, so a special thank you to him for today's idea. Now, let's take a moment and look at some of the ways we use this verb. The first way you might hear differ used means to be unlike or dissimilar. Unlike, not like, dissimilar, not the same. We're going to see some examples of this being used a little later in the video, right? We can find things that are not the same among groups of people, among items. And again, we'll see more examples later. The second main way to use the verb differ means to disagree. So we have different ideas, different opinions about something, and again, we'll see some more examples of that in just a moment. For now, you should know that differ is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of the verb, all you need to do is add ing. That forms differing. The past tense and participle forms of our verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, differ, ends in a voiced R sound. This means our ed ending is just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. The past tense and the participle forms of our verb should sound like this: differed, differed. Okay. Now, differ is frequently used as part of a phrasal verb, so we're going to talk about and look at several examples of that today. The first phrasal verb we'll discuss is to differ about. One way to use this phrasal verb means to disagree about something. An example of this might be, we have differed about expansion plans, but we are in agreement that we need to expand in the next year. Okay. So maybe this is a group of co-workers, maybe business professionals, right? The second part of the sentence is telling us that they agree they need to expand, maybe build a new location, maybe have workers in a different area, right? It could mean different things. But, right, they disagree exactly about how to do it. This sentence is using the present perfect. Likely it's talking about an action that started in the past and continues into the present. A second way to use differ about gets a little stronger than just disagree. Now it's to argue or to debate something. An example of this might be, you can differ about screen time for the children, but you shouldn't argue in front of them. Okay. So maybe we have a grandparent or maybe a parenting expert talking to some parents, right? Saying, right, you can argue about this. You can debate what you think is best, but don't do that in front of the children, right? Or have that argument away from them or at a time when they can't hear it. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to differ from. This can mean to be unlike someone or something. An example of this: how does her latest book differ from her earlier ones? Right? So we're looking for here the qualities that are not the same. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to differ in. This means to have specific differences, either from someone or from something. An example of this: in the surveys, students and professors differed in their perceptions of class workloads. This is an example of the simple past tense. We're talking about a completed action. So here people took the surveys, right? Now we look at the results, and here we can see we have different opinions. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to differ on. The first way to use differ on means to disagree about something. An example of this: people differ on the most important issue facing the country now. Here's a simple present sentence talking what is likely a fact, right? That we don't all agree what is the biggest or most important issue, right? We're going to have a bit of disagreement. The second way to use differ on, again, kind of strengthens it to the point where we are arguing or debating something. An example of this: they have differed on politics so much. We now have a no politics at the dinner table rule at our family parties. Okay? Here's another present perfect sentence, right? This action of arguing maybe started in the past or occurred at some unknown point in the past, maybe many times in the past. And now we have learned, right, we're just not going to talk about this subject as a result. The last phrasal verb you might encounter is to differ from. This can mean to disagree about something. An example of this might be: Smith differed with Jenks on the solutions to the problem of rapidly rising electricity rates. I saw a sentence similar to this recently. It was an article talking about two candidates running for a city office or a local office. They were discussing a problem that many people in their community were upset about, right? And it's noting they disagreed how to address or how to resolve this problem. Now let's move on and talk about some words and one phrase that are related to our verb differ. The first word we're going to talk about today is the noun difference. Okay? This noun can have a few different meanings. One way to use it is to talk about a point or a way in which people or things are not the same. An example of this in a sentence might be: let's look at the differences in these wallpaper samples. So here someone is maybe trying to pick out what they want to hang in their home, right? And they want to see kind of what is not similar about these various samples. A second way to use the noun difference can refer to a disagreement, a quarrel. You might think of that like a fight or a dispute. An example of this might be: they aired their differences to everyone in the restaurant, right? So this is really letting us know they fought, right? Everybody got to hear maybe what they didn't like about someone or something or how someone was acting. A third way to use the noun difference is to talk about a quantity by which amounts differ, or you might hear it used in connection to subtraction. So it's kind of the remainder left after subtraction of one value from another. Let's take a look at that definition in a sentence. Your net pay is the difference between your gross pay and deduction. So gross is kind of that total, right? And then here in the United States, we take out many different kinds of taxes and sometimes payments for insurance. What is left is our net pay, right? The difference. Another word you're likely to encounter is the adjective different. Different can have a number of different meanings. One way to use the adjective is to describe something that is not the same as another person or another thing. Okay? An example of this might be: there are different ways to solve this problem. Right? Maybe you've heard a math teacher say that and demonstrate for you. There can be more than one way to arrive at the right answer. A second way to use the word different can mean something that is unlike in nature, form, or quality. And I think, oh no, there's my second sentence. Sorry, I wasn't seeing that well in my notes. So he's a pretty different guy. Might be saying, right, this is not like other people. Okay? Another way to use different can mean unusual, distinct, or separate. An example of this: on 2 different days, you've been late this month. Right? So they're sort of noting 2 distinct days or 2 distinct times. Another word you might encounter is the adverb differently. This is describing either an action or maybe another adjective that is done in a way that is not the same as another way or not the same as before. An example of this: she's thinking differently about the issue after reading a number of books, right? So whatever her thought process was about something, it has changed. One last phrase you might hear people use, and that phrase is to beg to differ. This phrase is used to indicate that one wants to disagree with someone, but do it in a polite way. So if you hear someone saying this, they are attempting to be polite, but who knows, sometimes the words that follow afterwards are always not always so clear. So an example of how you might hear this used, perhaps in a meeting or some type of discussion: thanks for sharing your opinion, but I beg to differ, right? And usually what would come after that would then be an explanation why I have a different opinion or a different thought about something. Thank you all so much for watching today's video, and thanks again to Louise for suggesting today's verb. I hope you all have a wonderful day.